Good morning. It's Monday morning and it is beautiful outside. I heard somebody complaining because they said, "Oh, it's supposed to be fall." This is the most perfect weather in the whole world, and I am so very happy about it. We are ASMM Digital's Small Business Connections. We're the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. I actually created this solely as a way to put my clients in front of people. And then it evolved. And that's what happens in business. That's what we do. So it evolved in a way that I realized I'm bringing these entrepreneurs on and they know something that I can personally use in my business. And so we started bringing them on and saying, what can you give people to use in their business? What can you give people to use in their lives that are going to make their business life, their personal life, everything better? That's what our goal is here. So we're on episode 92, and today's episode is brought to you by Warrior Music Foundation. Warrior Music Foundation is a cause that's near and dear to my heart. It's very much like Burgers and Bands for suicide prevention. Their goal is to stop suicide, and in their case, it's among veterans and their families. What they do, though, is something so unique and so fun and so amazing that I have to tell you about it. Warrior Music Foundation provides free music therapy and free music lessons to veterans and their families. And why this is important is because oftentimes veterans' families are left out of the mix, and they are going through many of the same things that their spouses, their wives, their husbands, their children they're going through the same things as the veteran themselves. And so I love that Michael has done this. He's created really something amazing, and he's got a lot of great musicians who are giving free lessons. They provide this for veterans right now in Maryland and Pennsylvania. They're going to be spreading it out. I hope you guys will consider donating to them because it takes about $1,000 per veteran to get them through the program. So it's not cheap. They do music therapy. That part is probably the most expensive part because many of the veterans or many of the musicians are donating their time. But the therapy part is the part that makes it expensive. So if you could please go over, donate at warriormusicfoundation.org. We would appreciate it. They would appreciate it. It would mean a lot to a lot of people, but especially our veterans. And this is Veterans Day week. That's Veterans Day is on the 11th, right? So that's Wednesday. So I want to remind you that we're streaming live. Why does that matter? Because you can ask questions. If you're watching this and not listening to it on the podcast, you can ask questions of our guests and they'll be able to answer you right here. You've got real life experts. So go ahead and get their help. Our guest today is Shay Cook. She owns Crusaders for Change. And Shay, tell them a little bit about yourself. Instead of me introducing you, you tell them what you do and why it's so important.
Yeah, excuse me. Thank you, Ann. I really appreciate this opportunity this morning. And again, I am Shay Cook. I'm the CEO and founder of Crusaders for Change. And we provide financial counseling and coaching and classes to individuals that are ready to become financially free through, through financial counseling, coaching, and classes. And, people that are ready to get out of debt, improve their credit, save, meet any kind of financial goal, we're here to assist them. So I've been doing this officially since 2016 under Crusaders for Change, but actually since we mentioned the military, I used to work for the military. I worked for the Air Force, the Army, and the Coast Guard for almost 12 years, but and being a contractor as well. So around 20 years and working for the credit union too.
Oh, that's awesome. So one of the things I was thinking about, I go on a walk every morning before I do the podcast. So I was thinking on my walk about the shame that people feel around their money. And they think, oh, I don't want to tell people. I don't want people to know because everybody else has got their stuff together, right? They've all got their stuff together. They can do this. But that's not true. Most people struggle with money. Many people struggle with money. So you're not alone in this process. Is that something you find you have to get across to people in the beginning?
Oh, yes, definitely. As the counselor piece, because I am a counselor and a coach, I'm helping people change their behaviors. And a lot of times in the beginning, we are dealing with that shame from just generational, from family members, just out in the world. People have this real big stigma about money. I always say people will talk about sex before they'll talk about money. So it's time to definitely change that and say, hey, I messed up or I have trouble with money and it's okay. We can move forward.
Right. Or I simply don't know.
Exactly.
Somebody said there was a question the other day somebody asked about loans. And it was a interesting question because I was like, they acted like they should know. And I'm like, you really shouldn't. This is not a question that you're born, oh yeah, this information is just in the back of my head. It's not. You have to ask those questions to figure it out. So you have a formula that you use and you help to help people understand the key to financial freedom, and it's money. Can tell us first, what is that acronym? What's it stand for? And then let's go through each piece individually.
Yes, definitely. So money is acronym I came up for the business a couple years ago, and it's manage, opportunity, necessity, experience, and then you.
Awesome. And I love the last piece because I think it's so important. And anyway, let's get there. So let's start first with manage. When you talk about managing, what do you mean?
Yeah, this can be completed by knowing your network, developing and following a spend plan, etc. So I meet with so many people who don't know how much money they have coming in or how much money that they have going out. That's a big thing. And in order to reach a sense of freedom within your finances, you need to know the numbers and how much money is coming in and out.
Oh yeah, and I have to tell you something, Shay. We just had this discussion this weekend. My husband and I guess about 2 years ago, I have been managing the finances from the beginning of our marriage. And about 2 years ago, I'm like, I'm running a charity, I'm running a business, I'm running the family, and something's got to give. And so I said, why don't you take over the finances? And he did. And it was wonderful because it let me let go. But then yesterday, we had this conversation and I said, I have no idea how much money's going out every month. I really don't. And he gave me the number and I just about fell out of my seat. And I said, okay, well, wait a second. That's a good thing for me to know. So I think, yes, managing it, but probably as a couple, it's important to manage that together.
Yes, exactly. I work with a lot of individuals, but couples, I have so much fun working with them and sitting down and seeing the numbers of, again, coming out is, how much money is going out is very important, but people don't know how much money they have coming in. And when we consider their 401ks and their, if they're military, their TSPs and all of the insurances and all of the other stuff that might be coming out of their, net income. After we figure that out, like, oh my goodness, this much money's coming in, but then a lot of times they're spending over what's coming in. So I'm having to help them understand that, you need to live within your means.
Exactly. Well, and I want to say something here that I think is important. I have a hard time talking about money. I
Mm.
really do. Part of it is I grew up very, very poor. I just didn't have the money that we needed. We were that family who was spending beyond what we were making. And it was hard. It was hard growing up. So those financial conversations are difficult for me. So we came up with something this weekend and I said, in my business, Anastasia, who's my COO, will come to me and she says, these are the things that are going on. And let me give you our financial report without all of the stuff. She gives me my highlights, right? And so I said to my husband, what if you just give me highlights like Anastasia does? What's coming in, what's going out, what can we control? And so it was nice to have that. Okay, it doesn't have to be this long drawn out process that's going to freak me out. It can be that simple.
That is so good. And same with couples, I try to tell them leads meet every cycle that you're paying your bills, whether that is monthly, excuse me, or every 2 weeks. It's important to sit down and have those conversations about what's coming in, what's going out, what's your plans, what's your goals. And that's great.
Right. All right. So the next key is opportunity. Talk a little bit about what the opportunity is here.
Yeah, opportunity is really monetizing, those side hustles or have multiple streams of income. Another opportunity is, how can we save money, cutting back on unnecessary expenses. Majority of the time, there is something you can cut back on and use to pay for another bill, save, or put towards another financial goal, like a vacation. I always try to tell people to build in a fun goal. So I see most people struggling with their food bill each month. So that's something, you can discuss as well. But there's always an opportunity to make more money or to save money, which will help you in the long run.
Right. And actually, I do have a question. Do you think that is something that if you build it in, as a plan, like I'm just having, well, my kids are a good example. For my children, when they were little, instead of giving them their allowance, I put their allowance into savings.
Mm.
And so that when they graduated, they had actually quite a bit of money saved. So without me ever thinking about it, because it was just going out automatically into their savings account. Or do you find that's better? Or do you think, is there something that would work better than that?
No, automating your savings is perfect. I think almost perfect. Some people, prefer to transfer every month or put it in an envelope. There's many different, opportunities to do that. But people that automate their savings do see a growth, more, a higher growth than, those that are not automating those. I did the same for my daughter. We automated her savings from early on. So when she graduated from high school, right before, we were able to buy her a car outright because we had saved for that. We would put it towards for her college as well. So there's many opportunities for that. So automating savings is a great way to build your wealth, but also just to meet a savings goal.
Right, exactly. And I love the idea that there's opportunity, you said, and a side hustle, right?
Yes.
That maybe you didn't. So I own a business, right? And so for me, I'm a little biased that I think owning a business and having that is really just such a phenomenal thing to have and so much control. But I hadn't thought of it until I started doing it myself. I
Yeah.
hadn't thought of how you could have these side hustles. And I just met a wonderful man, and I'm so sorry I can't remember his name, but he started they had bought a house and then they moved and then they moved back and they realized, well, we're just going to rent that house out. And in the process, here he is managing this house, and he realized, oh, I could to be a property manager for veterans, for people who are moving across the country, but they want to have a house that's their rental property. So he started the side hustle, and it became way bigger than he expected.
Wow.
So I love the idea that you can have these opportunities and they might come out of something you're not even expecting.
That is so true. Or just a passion that you might have if it's making jewelry, doing hair, going out and just selling old clothes, that you have. There's so many opportunities to make more money. Multiple streams of income is very important, not only for building wealth, but, to put more money into your pocket and to save for different goals that you might have.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about necessity. And I have to tell you this word, I am not even sure I've spelled it right. I had to look it up 3 times. So it's supposed to be right, but it doesn't look that way on the
I
screen.
know it's right. So we always say money is a necessary tool, but not the end goal. So your end goal shouldn't be money, but you should plan to accomplish with it what you plan to accomplish with it rather. So many people get caught up with the idea of getting it, saving it, spending it, gambling it. But it's best to focus on how it can help you and others meet a personal, professional, serious, and fun goal.
Oh, I like that. So how do you help people find that part? How do you, because everybody's like, well, I got to pay my bills. And it's like, well, that's great, but it's, and that's, definitely something because it takes off the stress if what you're aiming for is I've got to pay my bills. But if it's something more, then it's more fun to get there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
A lot of people get stuck in that cycle of just paying their bills. And then, so sometimes people struggle. And I've found this with the younger millennials and Generation Zers that are, living for today, which is great to live for the now. But, and they have the fear of missing out. So they have FOMO. But I'm like, okay, so we need to look at your goals. We need to look at a 1 year goals, your 5 year goals, 10 years and beyond. So we can, excuse me, plan for those goals. And once they start thinking about it, like, well, yeah, I do have a trip that I want to go on in a year, or I do want to buy a house, or my kid's going to go to college, or, I'm going to retire in the next 10 years. So even though I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not I can educate on investments and I'll move them to some kind of wealth of financial advisor or planner. I am helping here to help them open their mind and think beyond the necessity, beyond just the getting the money. What kind of goals do you have in those 1, 5, 10 year span to help you plan for? And then again, for the fun goals, I always have to build that in because, if you're just working just to pay bills and you're not having fun, what kind of life is that? So I'm here to help them with that.
I love that. And the other thing, I was just thinking about this. So this whole conversation this weekend, I guess because you were coming on Monday, this was on my mind, right? And so I said to my husband, so what are your goals for us? And he gave them to me and I went, that's not my goal. And I told him my goal and he's like, oh, that's not my goal. So I was like, okay, so I guess we should talk about what our goals are because we're aiming at 2 separate things. And in the end, that's not going to make us happy. We've been married for 30 years, so you might think we have discussed this in detail, but we've discussed it out here, not together, right? So it's funny having you come on made me think about that.
Well, that's great. And I
So,
just want to mention, I have a lot of couples as well that have the same thing. I always say sometimes they're not in the same page or chapter, sometimes they're not in the same book when it comes to how to manage the money, but also what their goals are. And so once they will do an exercise of each of them sharing what their goals are in different areas, different time spans, and then they'll be like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know you wanted that, or I didn't know. So, we have to bring them back in the same book, in the same chapter, hopefully on the same page to get them to, meet those goals, compromise or say, okay, you want that goal, I want this goal. How do we plan to meet both of those goals together?
right. Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about experience. This is what the fourth in your five keys.
Exactly. Yeah. So your experience with money can determine your future. And this is very important because just because you started off with a negative money experience doesn't mean you can't change that into a positive experience. We have to change our mindset about money. Don't get stuck in negative money experience. This is where I find I spend the majority of the time with my clients, especially as a counselor, trying to break these bad money experiences and or beliefs, which can take time. And I love how you started off with the shame because that's where this fits in. The shame about the money. I see a lot of shame with people, and I've had this shame, to be honest. You start making good money, more money, and then you feel shame about, other family members or friends that you feel like you kind of quote unquote left behind, or you're not be able to support them and you're living this great life, and they're struggling or so forth. So people deal with shame on both sides, with money or without money. So I'm here to help them break those negative mindsets and say, okay, it's okay that I'm making good money. I can help my family as needed, as fits in my budget and my spend plan. But I'm also need to manage that accordingly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and our experiences, it's hard. This I told you I don't like to talk about money. Part of that is that when we talk about money in our house, my husband's like, we're going to put money here, we're going to put it there. And I get nervous. I mean, really honestly, I'm like, I have always wanted to have a savings over here that's just for absolutely for emergencies that I can get in the next second. And that's kind of an unreasonable, the next second idea, right? But it comes from this experience of being a child and knowing that anything can happen. And so we had to talk that through. How do we make me feel comfortable that the world's not going to end tomorrow, right? If I can't get the money in the next second. So yeah, your experiences are so important.
It is so important. That goes back to the manage piece of this money keys is, mentioning the emergency savings. Make sure you are planning for those emergencies. That's usually a goal that I not force, but kind of quote unquote force on my clients saying, okay, you have all these wonderful goals, but let's also plan for the emergency savings. That's very important. But you're right. Some people are like, oh, I need to have thousands and thousands of dollars in emergency savings, but they have a lot of debt. They have bad credit. So I'm having to, balance that and say, okay, we need to pay off some of this debt. We need to, build up the savings and then also move on to building wealth. But, their experiences can affect all of that. So I help them get through
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So the final key is you.
that.
Tell me about that. Why is the final key you?
Yeah, because financial freedom starts with you. I mean, you and only you can make the choice on how you really view money and what it can do for your life. And it takes self control, discipline, change behaviors, and time. That is so important, time to accomplish all of this. But you make the first step in order to reach the goal of financial freedom. So, through managing your money appropriately, seeking opportunities to save and make more money, understanding money is a necessity, but not the end goal, and changing and or working through your negative experiences, you can become financially free.
That's awesome. I actually, it's again, I think these shows are really funny because I do them, I kind of plan them, I kind of know what's coming up, but they must lurk in the back of my mind because things happen. So this weekend I actually am listening and bought the book. Let's see, where is it? The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Mhm.
And he's like, most of us, instead of doing the things we want to do, we have these excuses. And the only person who's responsible for what we want to do is us. And a good example of that is saying, okay, yes, you're right. I want to make the money and I want to do this, but every time I make money, every time there's money in the bank, my car breaks down or my washing machine breaks down. And so I'm not really in charge. Instead of going, yes, However, had I planned on an emergency fund that I said, this is how much so over time, this is how much I'm generally spending on these repairs. Let's budget that out. Let's put that as a budget item in my budget, right? Let's put it as a line item in my budget so that we can get through. So it is important. It's easy to say, oh, no, this isn't my fault. These crappy things keep happening to me. But you're here to say you are responsible for that.
You are responsible. Yes. And it's going to take time. And you're so right. Planning for the emergency savings, especially I just want to mention with the pandemic, with the COVID going on, that people, we used to say 3 to 6, 9 months, 3 to 6 months of your expenses should be in your savings for emergency. But right now I'm telling people 6, 9, 12 months, because you never know what's going to happen.
You absolutely know.
Automating your savings, increasing that automatic transfer. So you have that built up, in case anything happens.
Yeah, well, and who could have guessed that this was going to happen?
Exactly.
So it's just, and I do look at it, and I do know so many people who don't have that. And I know we were lucky. My business has done really well through the pandemic because, quite honestly, because entrepreneurs are smart and they know they got to spend money on marketing or they're not going to make any money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my husband's job is he's with a government contractor, so that's a little more stable. So we were lucky. But I do look at people and wonder how they've survived this. If you were a waitress and you were living hand to mouth, if you were actually a lot of people, teachers, lots of people who were in good positions that suddenly went, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to my income, right? Or teachers, if you think about teachers, they've had to figure out a way to bring in somebody to help them with their kids while they're here teaching online because their kids are not in school by themselves, right? So there were so many expenses that did come up because of COVID, and it's awful.
Yeah, it is, but we're going to get through this. Hope you got to keep hope alive, as they say, and definitely
Exactly.
lessons learned through this period of life that, we can plan for the next, hopefully won't have a pandemic for another 100+ years, but you never know. Like you said, it might be your appliance in your house, your car, a medical expense. You might be laid off from your job, which I've been there before, and you have to plan for that.
Absolutely. All right. So I have a question before we finish up here. I know that one of the things in life for me is you have to, if you want something, you have to continue to read about it. You have to continue to learn about it. So I'm going to give you a chance to tell them how to get in touch with you. But what are some of the books that you recommend for people to really understand how finances work?
Wow. That's a good question. I wasn't prepared to answer.
I'm so sorry I put you right on the spot.
No, I mean, I have a lot of books in my room, so I'm looking to see if there's anything that pops out. Honestly, I read a lot of spiritual books and, intentional books, like starting with your why, those kind of books. That's one. Looking down here, The Power of Attention by Dr. Wayne Dyer. So those are kind of, because again, I have 2 degrees in psychology. I have a bachelor's and master's psychology. So I really love to study people's behavior, intention, purpose. So, and I think that helps as well. It's a bigger picture item. It's not necessarily a money item. I mean, I do a lot of like FINRA.org, SaveAndInvest.org. Those are the CFPB, consumerfinance.gov. There's so many websites out there that have really current information that I turn to. And that's what I use in my for my business if I'm looking for something for a client or I'm sharing with them. So it's online, it's easy to go. But when it comes to books for me, I'm really not into the money books, believe it or not. I said I was going to start. I've read a lot actually back in the day, but now I'm more into the intention, purpose, spiritual books, which really help me understand people.
And Shay, if you think about it, you've got to start there, right? Your last thing was you, right?
Yeah.
If you don't understand what's motivating you, if you don't understand that whole thing that we said about blaming other people or blaming the circumstances. Well, if you talk about, I think it was Tony Robbins talked about 2 brothers. I may have talked about this on the show before, but there were 2 brothers, and both of them said, one of them had been to prison. He had done horrible things his whole life. He'd just been a really bad person. He had robbed, he'd beaten, he'd hurt people. And he was just he had had this horrible grown up experience. His brother, on the other hand, was wealthy, was a member of a church, was just always giving back to the community, was just the really kind of cream of the top kind of person, right? Just really work hard. And they asked both of these brothers, why are you the way you are? And both of them said the same thing. Well, with a mom like mine, how could I be anything else? Right?
Wow.
And I love that story because I think it is us. We are choosing. And yes, we have these things that whether it's because you grew up poor or because you grew up with somebody who spent more money than they should, or you had all the money you needed and then you graduated and realized, oh, wait a second, that money doesn't come with me now that I left the house. And suddenly you've got to mind your budget. It's still you. And so I love that you said that start with why, and what was the other one? Attention, something.
Yeah, the
Attention.
power of intention. Yeah.
Yeah, power of intention. And I think you've got to pay attention to those things. You've got to know yourself well in order to be able to take care of life in general, but money in particular. You have to be able to understand those things that are motivating you.
Yeah, you're so right. So thank you for your time.
Yeah. Well,
Becoming financial. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, thank you. So tell me this. I put up your website here at the bottom. So crusadersforchange.org.
Mhm.
Tell me, well, first of all, when people get in touch with you, tell me a little bit about the process. How will that work? How do you work with people?
Yes, definitely. So what I recommend is that they go to the website, check it out, and then book a free 30-minute clarity call, which you can do right on the website. And then I'll just go through them, do a financial satisfaction assessment, see where they are, their priorities are, and then we can move forward with additional saving sessions. And those sessions can include any goals that you're trying to meet. Again, we'll go through some of the money keys, figuring out the spend plan, different opportunities for saving, making more money, and talk about the necessity and the behaviors and so forth. So crusadersforchange.org is the website. You can book a free 30-minute clarity call. And I am on all of the social media or some of the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. And we also have a YouTube channel with Sandy Change, who has different videos, money adventures that she's going through that you can, possibly relate to and see how we can help you.
If you're listening to this or you're watching this, please go and look at the YouTube channel. Your videos are wonderful. I absolutely love them. So I do want to ask you one more question, because this is a really unique thing that you do. You're really involved with people on a personal level. So what is the most rewarding thing about what you do?
Wow. A lot of us as coaches say, that aha moment when somebody's like, oh, and they see that they're learning. But just being there to help them move through their financial journey, seeing people pay off their debt. Again, and I can't express this so much, the numbers say 8 in 10 Americans have debt, and just seeing people actually be able to be relieved of that. Most of the time, most Americans are going to have some kind of debt, house or car, but being able to pay off that unsecured debt like student loans and credit cards, being able to buy a house, and just move on to building wealth and legacy. That is so, an amazing feeling. And just want to mention, God gave me this purpose, and I'm so obedient to this now. It wasn't in the beginning when my spirit showed me, but I'm just really thankful to be able to have this purpose and to help people.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I think you do. I mean, you have to you're so involved in their lives and you're making huge changes for people. So I love that you're doing that. So hang on a minute. I want to tell everybody what we have coming up next, and then I'm going to come right back to you. All right. Wednesday, we're going to have Sarik Arbel. She's from she's actually the BNI Central Maryland director, and she's going to talk about networking in the time of COVID. We're going to talk about a few things, but one of the things is something that I put out this morning, which is networking is good for your mental health. It's great for your business, but it's good for your mental health because it creates a community. And she's going to talk a little bit about how you build a community through networking and how that's going to help you, not just with your business, but with your life at large. I think it's going to be a really important talk. I'm very excited about it. I want to remind you to subscribe wherever you're listening to this. If you're listening to it by podcast, please subscribe there. Even if you're listening to it by podcast and not watching it, please go to youtube.com/Brennan Annie and subscribe to my YouTube channel. My kids are still giving me a hard time because I am not at 1,000 subscribers yet. It can't possibly be as hard as all this. So please do help. Go over and subscribe there so they don't think I'm such a nerd. And I do want to remind you, please go to warriormusicfoundation.org, make a donation, see what they're doing over there. And if you're a veteran, maybe this is a program you want to apply to. So do check that out and have a chance. I want to come back to Crusaders for Change. Shay, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ann. This was great, and I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. All right, I will talk. And actually, you just joined a BNI.
Yes, I did. Millersville Wednesday lunch. And that's
Awesome. Yes.
amazing.
Anastasia was telling me that because
Yeah.
she's in your group. So,
Yeah.
all right, everybody, I will see you Wednesday. I look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye. You stick around for a minute.